There is a law in the Bible that shuts a certain kind of person out. Not a criminal, not an enemy soldier, a whole people ruled out by birth. The words are hard. No Moabite may enter the assembly of the Lord, not even to the 10th generation. A wall written into the law itself. You are the wrong blood. You do not belong here. And yet, there is a woman in this book who is exactly that. A Moabite, a foreigner, a widow with no name, no land, and no future. Everything the world counts against a person, she is. And by the last page, this outsider is standing inside the family tree of Israel's greatest king, great-grandmother to David. And further down that same line, an ancestor of Jesus himself. The one the law shut out becomes the door the king walks through. Her name is Ruth, and her story is one of the quietest in all of Scripture. No plagues, no armies, no fire from heaven. Just 2 grieving women, an empty road, a field of barley, and a kindness that refuses to quit. There is a Hebrew word for that kind of kindness. It runs underneath this whole book like a hidden spring. By the end of these 20 minutes, you will know exactly what it means and why it changes everything. It begins, as so much heartbreak does, with a famine and a family that had to leave home to survive. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and here is the first bitter irony of this story. The famine falls in a town called Bethlehem, and Bethlehem means, in Hebrew, house of bread. The house of bread had run out of bread. So a man named Elimelech took his wife Naomi and their 2 sons and left. They crossed over to the fields of Moab, foreign country, foreign gods. But there was food there. It was meant to be temporary, a season away until the rains came home. It did not turn out that way, because in Moab, Elimelech died, and Naomi, far from home, was left with her 2 boys. The sons grew up, and each married a woman of Moab. One was named Orpah, the other was named Ruth. And then, after about 10 years, both sons died too. Read the sentence slowly, because it is one of the loneliest in the Bible. And the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband. 3 graves in a foreign land. A mother who has buried her whole family. And in that world, a woman with no man to provide had almost nothing at all. Naomi is now the most vulnerable person the Bible knows how to describe. A widow. Old. Poor. A stranger in someone else's country. Then word reached her that the famine back home had lifted, that the Lord had visited his people and given them bread again. The house of bread was full once more. So Naomi decided to go home to Bethlehem to grow old near her own people, and her 2 daughters-in-law set out on the road with her. But partway down that road, Naomi stopped, and she turned to the 2 young women and tried to set them free. "Go back," she said. "Go back to your mother's homes. May the Lord show you kindness, as you have shown to the dead and to me. May he give each of you rest in the home of a new husband." In Bethlehem they would be foreigners, Moabites, 2 more mouths with no prospects. Better, she thought, to send them back while they were still young enough to start again. And she kissed them, and all 3 of them wept out loud. Both women protested. "No, we will go back with you, to your people." But Naomi pressed them. "Why would you come? I have no more sons to give you as husbands. I am too old. The hand of the Lord has gone out against me." And they wept again. And this time Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. She did the sensible thing, the understandable thing. She turned back to her people and her gods, and we never hear of her again. But Ruth clung to her. The word is physical. She held on. And when Naomi said, "Look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Go with her," Ruth answered with the most famous words a daughter-in-law has ever spoken. So beautiful that people who have never opened a Bible have heard them read at weddings. "Do not urge me to leave you, or to turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. Understand what she is giving up. She is a young widow. She could go home, remarry, be safe. Instead, she binds herself to a bitter old woman with nothing to offer, in a country that will look at her and see only a Moabite. And notice the center of it. Your God, my God. This is not only loyalty to Naomi, it is a conversion. Ruth is leaving the gods of Moab and throwing herself, empty-handed, on the God of Israel. The very God whose law had a wall with her name on it. And when Naomi saw that Ruth was determined, she stopped arguing, and the two of them walked on together all the way to Bethlehem, and their arrival stirred the whole town. Can this be Naomi? The women hardly knew her. Grief had changed her face, and Naomi said something that tells you everything about where her heart was. Do not call me Naomi. Naomi means pleasant. Call me Mara. Mara means bitter. Call me bitter, she said, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. It is one of the most honest things anyone says in Scripture. She is not pretending to be fine. She has lost a husband, 2 sons, a whole future, and she says so out loud to God's face. The Bible has room for that kind of grief, but watch the very last line of the chapter. It slips in almost too quietly to notice. So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. The barley harvest. Naomi feels empty, but the fields are heavy with grain, and unknown to her, the whole rest of her story is about to walk into one of them. Now, to understand what happens next, you need to know one law of ancient Israel, and it is a beautiful one. When a farmer harvested his field, he was commanded not to reap it to the very edges, not to go back for what he dropped. Whatever was missed, whatever fell, was to be left for the poor, the widow, the orphan, and the foreigner. It was called gleaning, a kind of dignity built into the law. You did not receive a handout. You went in and you worked, and you gathered what was left for you. And Ruth, the foreign widow, was exactly the person that law was written for. Poor, widowed, a stranger, bound to another widow with no one to provide. So Ruth said to Naomi, "Let me go and glean behind anyone who will show me kindness." And Naomi said, "Go, my daughter." And here comes one of the most important little phrases in the whole Bible. The text says, as it happened, Ruth came to the part of the field belonging to Boaz. And the writer says it that way on purpose, almost winking at you, because nothing in this book happens by chance. That is the whole secret of the story of Ruth. No sea splitting, no voice from the sky, just an ordinary woman walking into an ordinary field, and God, unseen, arranging every step. Because Boaz, the man who owned that field, was not just anyone, he was a relative of Naomi's dead husband. A worthy man, the text says, of the clan of Elimelech, which means, under the law, Boaz was something with a very special name. He was a kinsman redeemer, in Hebrew, a goal. Hold on to that word. It is the key to the whole book. A goal was a near relative whose job was to rescue his family when they fell, to buy back land they had lost, to pay off their debts, even to marry a childless widow and raise up a son to carry on the dead man's name. The goal was the family's safety net, the one who steps in when everything has gone wrong and pays out of his own pocket to put it right. And Ruth, by chance, has just walked into the field of one. And then Boaz himself arrived from town, and the first thing out of his mouth to his workers is a blessing. "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." This is a man whose faith shows in how he treats the people who work for him. And he noticed her. Who is that young woman? And his foreman said, she is the Moabite who came back with Naomi. She asked to glean, and she has been on her feet since morning, hardly resting. And Boaz went straight to her. My daughter, do not glean in any other field. Stay here with my young women. I have told the young men not to lay a hand on you. And when you are thirsty, drink from the jars my servants have filled. And Ruth fell on her face, overwhelmed. Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you would notice me, a foreigner? And listen to his answer. I have heard all that you have done for your mother-in-law since your husband died, how you left your father and mother in your homeland and came to a people you did not know. Then Boaz speaks a blessing that names, without knowing it, the very thing that is already happening. The Lord repay you for what you have done, and a full reward be given you by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings, he says, you have come to take refuge, under his wings. Remember that image, a bird gathering her young in close under her feathers. Ruth has run to hide beneath the wings of the God of Israel, and she does not yet know that God is about to answer that blessing through the very man who is speaking it. And Boaz did not stop at words. At the meal he shared his own food with her, this foreign gleaner, and she ate until she was full and still had some left over. And then, quietly, he told his young men something. Let her glean even among the sheaves, and pull out some stalks from your own bundles on purpose, and leave them for her to find. Do not rebuke her. And that evening, Ruth beat out what she had gathered. And it was a huge amount, far more than a gleaner could gather in a day. She carried it home, and Naomi's eyes went wide. Where did you glean today? Blessed be the man who noticed you. And Ruth said, his name is Boaz. And for the first time in the whole story, something lifts in Naomi. Blessed be he by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. And then she said the words that turn the key. That man is a close relative of ours. He is one of our redeemers. So Ruth stayed close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning through the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. Weeks passed, safe and provided for, but nothing more had happened. And Naomi decided it was time to act. My daughter, she said, should I not seek rest for you, a home where it will be well with you? And then she laid out a plan that is, to modern ears, one of the strangest scenes in the Bible. Tonight, Boaz will be winnowing barley at the threshing floor. Wash and put on perfume and your best cloak and go down. But do not let him know you are there until he has finished eating and drinking. And when he lies down to sleep, mark the place. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do. Now, this scene has been misread for centuries, so let us be clear. This is not a seduction. In that culture, to lie at a man's feet and ask him to cover you was a formal, recognizable request. Ruth is not offering herself for a night. She is proposing marriage. She is asking Boaz to be her redeemer, and she is doing it at enormous risk. A foreign woman, alone at night at a threshing floor full of men. If Boaz were a lesser man, this could destroy her. She is placing her whole future and her reputation into his hands, trusting his character in the dark. So Ruth went down and did exactly as Naomi said. Boaz ate and drank, and his heart was merry, and he lay down at the far end of the grain heap. And quietly, in the dark, she came and uncovered his feet and lay down. And at midnight the man woke with a start and turned, and there was a woman lying at his feet. Who are you? He whispered. And she said, I am Ruth, your servant. And then, in words that echo his own blessing back to him, she said, spread your wings over your servant, for you are a redeemer. It is the most breathtaking moment in the book. Boaz had prayed that God would shelter her under his wings. And now Ruth looks at Boaz and says, then be the wings, Be the answer to your own prayer. Cover me. And Boaz is moved to his core. May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. This kindness is greater than the first. You have not run after younger men, rich or poor. You have come to me. Do not be afraid, he said. I will do for you all that you ask, for everyone in town knows that you are a woman of worth. But then, being an honest man, he tells her the one complication. It is true that I am a redeemer, but there is a redeemer nearer than I am, a closer relative with the first right and the first duty. I cannot simply take you, he says. The law must be honored. Stay tonight, and in the morning, if that man will redeem you, good. But if he will not, then, as the Lord lives, I will redeem you myself. Even now, wanting her, he will not cut a corner. He will do it right, or not at all. And in the morning, before anyone could recognize her, he sent her home, but not empty-handed. He poured 6 measures of barley into her shawl, a gift for Naomi, a sign that he meant every word. And Ruth came home and told Naomi everything. And Naomi, who knew this man, smiled. Wait, my daughter, until you see how it turns out, for that man will not rest until the matter is settled today. So Boaz went up to the gate of the town, and the gate, in those days, was the courthouse. It was where deals were struck and disputes were judged in the open in front of witnesses. And there, as it happened, the nearer redeemer came walking by. Boaz called him over. Sit down here. And he gathered 10 elders of the town to sit as witnesses. And Boaz laid it out. Naomi is selling the piece of land that belonged to our relative Elimelech. You are the nearest redeemer. If you will redeem it, redeem it. If not, tell me, for I am next after you. And the man said, easily of course, I will redeem it. A field is a good investment. Why not? On the day you buy the field from Naomi, he says, you also acquire Ruth the Moabite, the widow of the dead, in order to raise up an heir in the dead man's name on his land. In other words, this is not just land. It comes with a duty. Marry the widow. Give the dead man a son, and that son, not you, will inherit the very field you just paid for. And the man's face changed. Then I cannot redeem it, he said. It would ruin my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption yourself. I cannot do it. He wanted the asset. He did not want the person. He would take the field, but not the foreign widow and the cost that came with her. And so, in refusing, he handed the whole thing to Boaz. And here, the writer pauses to explain an old custom to us, because even by his day, it had faded. In earlier times in Israel, to seal a redemption, a man would take off his sandal and hand it to the other. That was how a deal was made binding in front of witnesses. So the nearer redeemer drew off his sandal and gave it to Boaz. Take it. It is yours. And with that quiet gesture, everything changed. And Boaz turned to the elders and all the people at the gate. You are witnesses today. I have bought all that belonged to Elimelech and his sons from the hand of Naomi. And Ruth the Moabite, he said, I have taken to be my wife, to raise up the name of the dead on his inheritance, so that his name will not be cut off from among his people. You are witnesses this day. And all the people at the gate spoke a blessing over them. May the Lord make this woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, who together built up the house of Israel. Do you hear it? They are naming a Moabite widow alongside the mothers of the whole nation. The wall the law had built is not just crossed, it is, in this moment, forgotten. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And the Lord gave her a child. The two of them, who had waited and grieved and lost so much, held a son. And now watch what the women of the town do. They do not run to Ruth. They run to Naomi, to Mara, to the woman who came home empty and told everyone to call her bitter. Blessed be the Lord, they say, who has not left you today without a redeemer. He will be to you a restorer of life and a nourisher of your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you, who is more to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." And Naomi took the child and laid him on her lap and became his nurse. The empty arms are full. The woman who said, "The Lord brought me back empty," is holding the future in her hands. And the women gave the baby a name. "A son has been born to Naomi," they said, and they called him Obed. And then, in a single sentence, this small, quiet story suddenly opens up into the whole sweep of the Bible. Obed, the text says, was the father of Jesse, and Jesse was the father of David. David, the shepherd boy, the giant killer, the king, Israel's greatest ruler, the man after God's own heart. His great-grandmother was Ruth, the Moabite, the outsider, the law shutout. The book even closes with the family tree, tracing it all the way down: Perez, Hezron, Ram, Aminadab, Nahshon, Salmon, Boaz, Obed, Jesse, and David. That is why this whole book exists. It answers a question Israel could not answer on its own. Where did our greatest king come from? And the answer is staggering. From a famine, a foreign field, and the loyal love of a Moabite widow. And it does not stop at David. Turn to the very first page of the New Testament, to the family tree of Jesus. Most of it is a list of fathers. But Matthew stops to name a few mothers. And there, in the lineage of the Messiah, he writes it plainly. Boaz, the father of Obed by Ruth. Ruth is in the bloodline of Jesus Christ. And she is not the only outsider there. Matthew tells us Boaz himself was the son of Rahab. Rahab, who had been a prostitute of Jericho. Another foreign woman. Another one the world had written off, woven straight into the line of the King of Kings. Now, come back to that word we set aside. Goel, the kinsman redeemer. A redeemer was someone near enough to be family, willing enough to pay the price, and able to lift the fallen out of ruin at his own cost. Boaz was that for Ruth. He took her shame as his own name and paid, in full, to give her a future she could never buy herself. And the whole book is quietly pointing past Boaz to a greater redeemer still to come. Because down that same family line, generations later, there is another. A relative near enough to become one of us. Willing enough to pay everything. Able to lift us out of a ruin we could never climb out of ourselves. The New Testament even uses the word. It says we have been redeemed, bought back. Not with silver, but with the life of the one who called himself our brother and was not ashamed to. And underneath all of it runs that Hebrew word I promised you at the start, Hesed. It is nearly impossible to translate. Loyal love, faithful kindness. Love that has made a promise and refuses to break it, even when there is nothing left to gain. There are no miracles in the book of Ruth, and that is the point. This is how God most often works. Not in fire and thunder, but in a kindness that shows up and stays and pays the cost. In ordinary people choosing loyal love, and a hidden hand weaving it all toward a king. So think of your own empty road. The season that took more than it gave. The future that looks like 3 graves in a foreign land. The story of Ruth will not tell you the grief was not real. Naomi's was. What it promises is that no life is ever as empty as it feels in the middle of it. That the God who arranges chance fields is arranging yours. And that there is a Redeemer, near enough to be family, who was already paid, in full, to bring the outsider home. 2 grieving women, an empty road, a field of barley, and a loyal love that would not quit, running quietly all the way down to a manger in the very same town. The house of bread, full again at last.